Alright, hello everyone, my name is Disc, and in this video we have a level 15 Grim Batol, which is going to be a nice upgrade for my channel. But before we get going here, I want to thank all of the new members of the channel and all the new subscribers. It's been pretty cool to see my channel growing and to really feel like I'm making a difference. And whereas I hope my videos here on YouTube serve a purpose for anyone who's watching, please check out my Metafy if you're interested in a one-on-one private lesson. I have been teaching my entire life, everything I'm kind of passionate about. I also am a teacher. We've been getting a lot done over there. A one-on-one environment where we can kind of pinpoint your deficits or where you might have loss is going to give the student a much better advantage to learn. We can cover UI, we can do gameplay reviews. I can even shadow your Mythic Plus keys. So please go check that out if you're interested to kind of level up your play. Also, if you're interested in any of my UI elements, they're open to all of my students through Metafy or any supporters of the channel. So before we get going here, I want to quickly flash the talents as always. And I already started pissing people off in my last video when I was teasing about this talent, which I kind of wanted to do a little focus on here. So if anyone has questions about anything on my book, please feel free to ask. Oh, actually, I think I'm not running that one anymore. Well, actually, I don't know. I'm still on the fence with this one. If any questions about anything, please feel free to ask. But I wanted to give a little feature to Prayer of Mending. So this is my first key, like hard key that I ran using it. So it wasn't fully maximized in this key. So please stay tuned for next key. But I think this might be the sleeper build of Disc. And I've been having a lot of fun playing it. So the argument here is if it wasn't Prayer of Mending, it'd be Nova, Holy Nova. This serves next to no purpose in combat. And it serves even less purpose out of combat. It's really just not a spell we play. We're only taking it to get us to Words of the Pious. But one of my students said, well, why don't you just go through Prayer of Mending? And I think I never saw this connection here in our talents. So anyway, I think this might be a really underrated spell to play, being that it does give us utility of something to press out of combat. So I think the argument here, still you don't want to press it in combat, similar to Nova. There are so many more things we need to be doing in combat than refreshing a Prayer of Mending, but it kind of does give us one more mini game and something to add to our out of combat rotation. So out of combat, I might precast a Radiance. Out of combat, I might play a Shield for the CDR. And then now out of combat, I can also play a Prayer of Mending. And in this video, it was not fully maximized. I have worked on it quite a bit since this video, but the idea is like before you start a key, you want to have a 10 stack. So you can cast it twice, it stacks up to 10, which means it has 10 jumps. It acts quite like a shield. It's directional healing after someone takes damage. In theory, a 10 stack can last 5 minutes as a buff. It's a 30-second cooldown after each jump, so in theory it could last like 5 minutes. So what this means kinda is if you have a 10 stack going into any pull, it's just going to be a small assist throughout the whole pull. And that's kind of, I think, really the only takeaway from maximizing this talent is just before every pull, in between combat, try and get a 10 stack leading in, and then it will kind of act as an assist throughout the pull. And we see a lot of examples here. It works better in fights where there's ticking damage. So like last boss, for example, when we get there, I have 2 10 stacks leading into the pull, and the Prayer of Mendings last for the first full minute of the fight. So it's just kind of like this small assist that you're not going to be pressing in combat, but pressing it out of combat hurts nothing. I think the only real argument I could give validity to not taking it is its mana. But I'm not having too much of a problem with mana, especially since it's just 1 or 2 casts per pull. I'm doing it in between combat, and I think it is pretty cool. So the last thing I wanted to say on this, I've been really trying to maximize it in between pulls. I've had it land upwards of 20 million healing overall, which is about 1% of my overall. And when it comes to someone's health bar, it's ticking for a little above 2% of their health. But being that it's something you only cast out of combat, I don't see an argument really against it except maybe the mana cost. But on average, it hits for around 100,000. It crits for around 130,000. And to maximize it, there's really not much to it. You just want to lead into combat with a 10 stack. And then exiting combat, just refresh whatever stack you have available. So let's say exiting combat, you have a 3 stack, which is about to expire. You want to quickly just Prayer of Mending it to preserve that stack and add it up going into the next pull. And we see some examples in here where I wasn't fully maximizing it yet, but we are going to talk about those when we get there. But here is a splash of the damage. I'm just going to kind of skim over this. It's pretty common and a pretty standard expectation, but around 450,000 damage per second, really good number. Aiming for an aggressive stance as discipline is going to yield high HPS. And then looking at the damage spread, we have the Entropic Rift on top. This is a little bit heavy of an AoE dungeon. The Void Wraith following in second. Really aiming for 6 Torments, 7 and 8 is bonus territory, and then the rest of these spells kind of trailing behind. But with all that being said, let's check out these Prayer of Mendings, and let's go ahead and clip over to the key. Alright, here we go. So, albeit it may be tempting to have 2 stacks of Prayer Mending leading into a key, you can only do 1, it'll reset. So I have a 10 stack here. PIs are going to the enhancement Shaman. His Ascendants and our PI are both 2 minutes long, pretty easy to do. And first pull, really important, sets the tone for the whole dungeon. Really, all you have to do, almost died, all you have to do is not get hit by the breath. So we have 2 ways we're tracking that, oh sorry, I'm cracking my knuckles. 2 ways we're tracking that spell. So notice on the dragon's nameplate, we have 1 icon attached to the Umbral Wind, and it's also going to pop up as an independent bar above my Radiance and Divine Star. You'll see it on the next one. And so I'm making a mistake here, if anyone can catch it before I divulge what's happening. My Schism and my Focus damage was not on the dragon. So arguably we would not have had that 3rd wind attack. Or is it 2? I don't know. But I was targeting the wrong person. Small mistake, but it is critical we attack the right mob. What I've done since then to kind of remedy that problem, or mending in between combat, I've made the dragon a much darker red nameplate, and the other guy a slightly lighter red nameplate so it stands out better. And then really all we're thinking here is before we fly away for the dragon minigame, we want to play all of our spells. So 2 Pain Subs, Rapture, and Barrier. And there was the Barrier. So we are not in comms here, and that Barrier almost went to full waste when we really needed it for the tank. So slight miss there, but we do have Pain Subs. So 1 is out. Pet's down, I have a half rotation. Yeah, so Pet wasn't too far away, but we just needed output. So I'm reaching for a half rotation. Honestly, just setting up for my Pet, which is coming. And right there, you might have to replay that, but it's my new system to give me an icon on my player anytime I'm being targeted with a cast. And so in that case, I was 50% health and saw a cast falling on me, Shadow Meld. So here's my Pet rotation, working in Radiance as always. And 7 Torments for the win. Now I'm about to throw a Rapture here. Watch how I do it. This is a very niche play, but I'm just spamming the tank. All I'm trying to do is help the cooldown of my Pain Sub. So Rapture is a 1.5 cooldown, pretty free to throw, and we'll have it back in time. And so this is a little bit different of a play for me. So on this front one, I just go for 2s. Save my 1s for this middle pack. So I go 1, then 2, 1, then 2. And I have 2 1s left. You really only want to throw those on the front pack when they're stacked. And noticing that my party threw all of their 1s, it would have been overkill to send my 1 there. So I give a little more love to this guy on the bridge. I give him both my final 1s. Because that pull is honestly quite substantial, because pretty commonly we include the dragon. Prayer of Mending on land. Here's another example of Prayer Mending. When the first person in my range is friendly, Prayer Mending. And so I definitely want to focus the dragon here. Yep, got my focus early. We're in a good spot. And anticipating this hide, I'm just getting dots out. And it's a great thing we didn't die there. Okay, so ramping atonements, dots are already ramped. Here goes my Pet rotation. Radiance is planned. And in cases like this where it's a really crucial attack, I think there's a lot of value in having that isolated bar, which is above the Radiance and Star. Watch for it on this next one. It's really important we see the time of that cast in a place that's fixed where our eyes can get used to looking at it. So here comes that bar. I'm hiding. And Life Grip the Druid for the win. So it looked like his plan there was just go bear form and, like, I don't know, disengage or whatever he does. I gripped his ass. Okay, so here we're just kind of waiting for boss. And pretty standard, you'll hear me talk about, it's a 2-to-1 ratio, twice as many rifts as we do pet. So that's a pet and rift, and then followed by just a rift. That's pretty much what we do here. So the most important thing to note as a viewer is watch my play of defensives, always using my single shield on myself, and always running Fade and or Desperate Prayer. Then on this first one, I pre-atonement ramped, long atonements, and I queued my pet rotation immediately after the first tick of damage, which covers the second attack as well. So this is going to be just a half rotation. A really good thing we can do with our Radiance is precast it. That's what I did there. So precast Radiance, Rift, followed by Penance. I'm targeted, Desperate Prayer plus a single shield, and the Rift covers the second attack too. So it's really all about timing your Rift immediately after the Commanding Roar, and then the Collapse will cover the Rock Spike. So Radiance, and here goes the full pet rotation. Pet Death, Rift Penance, Radiance really early because we're about to get knocked, plus a single target shield. There goes the PI. And arguably, if anyone wants to call me out on it, that was a bad PI. Here goes Barrier, Personal Shield, and Fade. Doesn't touch me. Here goes the half rotation, queued right after the Roar. And as long as you Radiance before you're knocked up, it covers. And that one, it looked like I went for a couple single target heals, but that's totally fine too. The Collapse definitely worked. And then working in a couple of Raptures here, making sure I've flash heal procced my Protective Light. I have 2 shields left over. So here goes a full rotation. Pet Death, Rift, Penance, plus the Radiance. And you want the Radiance, and very importantly, before the Rock Spike. And threw a single Rapture on myself there just for extra coverage. And my last Rapture went to myself here. Here's just a half rotation, recasting a Radiance right into the Rift and Penance. Working my Radiance before the Rock Spike, Personal Shield and Fade, second Penance into the Rift, collapsing after the Rock Spike. So now it's just a rinse and repeat. I think it's pretty sensitive of a boss, but our spells pair with it perfectly as long as your timing is right. So Pet, Death, Death, Rift, Penance after the Roar. Working in my Radiance before the knock. Personal Shield. And the Collapse happens after the Rock Spike. So really the most important takeaway here is it's just a back and forth between half and full rotations. Always shielding yourself. Personal Shield before any attack that you're selected. Bouncing back and forth between Fade and Desperate Prayer, working in Raptures as needed. But the biggest pro tip for this fight is having your Collapsing Void work for you. And if you time your Rift after the Roar, the Collapse will happen after the Rock Spike. Palm out of combat. And then really just as needed, paint ups on the tank where there's overlaps between his 3-stack of bleed and one of the other attacks. The Roar, I guess. Okay, so we want to dot 2 of 4. And I have a Rapture to give and paint ups that need to regen. So high prio is the Rapture. It's going to cover for the Slam. I also queue and Fade. Here's Desperate Prayer. I'm sorry, here's Pet, Rift, and Vampiric Embrace. Switching targets to preserve my dots. Switching targets for executes, using focus targeting to fall back to my schism. Final Rapture 2 shields, and a final Rift, which I force collapse just for the healing. Palm in between combat, and right here, just in the nick of time, lay down the barrier. I had to play it frame by frame to see, but I honestly don't know why the cadence of these pulls is different. If anyone knows, please let me know. But I was ramping Atonement, ramping dots leading into my Pet Rift window. The last thing I did was play a Fear. There are a lot of really good Fear opportunities in these, in this dungeon. I don't think I have any great examples, but that was a Fear right there. 6 Torments. And ramping Atonements leading into this next attack. We can track its timer on the nameplate. And this is just a half rotation. Switching targets to preserve dots. Switching targets to grab executes. And coming up right here, I make a mistake. So if anyone can catch me on it. So we have a lot of missing health in party. And all of this time, I've had a Mind Blast to give. So arguably I could have fit one more Mind Blast there, would have helped with the damage, sped up the pull, helped recover the health, but it was a little bit of a miss. Yeah, Mind Blast is too free of a spell not to play, even if a pull is expiring. A double palm on the walk-in. And this boss is pretty common. We go full rotation, half rotation, and just cycle back and forth. So on open here, there goes my PI. And we have a full rotation, Pet and Rift, and it's really all about how we combo spells. They're pretty quick attacks too, so we really have to be ready, watching for the Forge swings, making sure we have the Atonement ramp ready in time. And so now this is the half rotation, but I combo it with Vampiric Embrace to kind of level the playing field. And anticipation of the next Forge Mace, I believe, yes. So I Radiance into my Rapture. The Radiance has our shields hit harder due to our mastery. And then we're back to a full rotation. Pet and Rift. Rapture is the modifier. And it's all about comboing in these high keys. Sometimes it's double combos and sometimes it's triple combos. Couple extra executes there. Really trying to get those guys down. And now we're kind of in the clear here. So here comes the next attack. And we have a half rotation with no extra modifiers. And this is where the tank misses his LOS, and we kind of just have to recover. So we're going to have dots and group that also lay puddles, and thank God we have a barrier that queues up right in time. And on this attack, we are back to a full rotation, but without my Desperate Prayer, I gave myself a personal Pain Sup to cover. And arguably, if you start this fight with just a half then full, instead of full then half, this would be a full rotation. So I was kind of expecting the tank to play the LOS tech on each attack, but we had one that missed. So arguably, if this is a pug, lead half then full, I was going for full send, doing full then half. And it almost bit us in the butt there, but we were able to make it. So here's a full rotation. I have Atonements in party. There's the second PI. And looking at my spells leading into the next AoE group attack, all I have is Rapture. Good spell to play to help the Pain Sups as well. And when you can, Radiance into the Rapture to bank off your Mastery. It also buys you a Harsh Discipline proc. Got our CDR and survived that attack. But I think the biggest takeaway here, and I close with just a Rift. The biggest takeaway is the group damage in party is a pretty quick attack, but it perfectly fits our spell profile. So we want a Rift on every single one and combo it however we can. So either Pet and Rift, Vampiric Embrace and Rift, Rapture and Rift. We want a Rift on each one of them and then just comboing spells as you have them. Okay, and then in these fights, really good to play your fears here. I don't think I got a good play, but these are very threatening pulls for the tank and the group. 5 torments. Sending just a rift here with a forced collapse. Okay, so both spells are 10 seconds away. Not the best, but first order of business here. Get a couple dots out, set my focus early. Desperate Prayer and Fade. Pet, Rift, and Vampiric Embrace to recover. So when I think about Rapture and Vampiric Embrace, they're both relatively, I would call them free cooldowns. They're only a minute and a half, which is relatively very short. So they're free to play. If you ever have them, it's not a bad idea just to go ahead and play it. And arguably you could get away in this pull without Vampiric Embrace, really without any modifiers. You just kind of play your cards right. But if you have it, you should play it. Okay, and I think I wise up from my last giant. And I go for a half rotation as soon as I had it. So again, kind of anticipating I'm not going to get full value. I high prio the second penance. Force the collapse. And thankfully, thankfully the collapse helped us just barely. It looks like it was syncopated with the damage by like a half second. And that was the lowest I've ever seen a tank get. They said 1 HP. I don't have numbers. Okay, have a 10 stack on Palm going in. And we have a big guy. So when we push him to 50%, that's when he blows up. We see the indicator on his nameplate. I play my spells. I have PI to give. There it goes. And yeah, so arguably I could have played this different. Pretty standard when we have the lava benders. You want to do half then full rotations. So I was trying to set up for a half to follow it with a full, but it just died so quickly I only got a half. So arguably I could have started that pull with a full rotation and it would have been better uptime on my spells. It just died so quick. Okay, so we have a full rotation to give. Healthy amount of dots are out. 10 stack of Palm. Healthy Atonements in Party. Pet Death. Rift. Penance. Looking Radiance. Oh, I did lose my dot spread there. That's okay. This is also a deceptively hard pull. I've seen tanks die a lot in this. Okay, so half rotation came up. No pet yet. But we can give a rift. And major callouts to the Shaman and the Druid here. They are really on top of their decurses. Looks like I'm going into a Rapture too, just kind of willy-nilly throwing them around. Mainly, again, if a Pain Sup is ever on cooldown, it is a perfect time for a Rapture. Okay, so in a case like this, the Palm on the Evoker, ouch, just ran out. So I needed to refresh it a little bit sooner there and make it double it from a 5 to a 10. Rather than casting it on myself, now I just have a 5. So yeah, I've gotten better at that since here. And I think it's a great play. Sue me. Okay, so I opened with a half rotation. We're pushing to the 50 mark. And then pretty much just throw our pet rotation once we have it. So PI's out. Full Atonements in Party. Here goes the full rotation. And I think just because of how much damage we're pumping, I don't even get full value here. Force the collapse though, just to not lose that value. Only 4 torments because it died. So, I don't know. Maybe I should lead with full rotations on that. Yeah, honestly, in hindsight, maybe do full then half rather than half full. I've seen it take too long sometimes, and I don't know. Maybe that's something I'll change next time. Okay, then also right here, I went just for a half. And I did watch this back ahead of time. Arguably, I could have done a full here too. So a full on the 3-pack, lead with a half here and then another full. Let's just see how I play it. So I have the pet and the rift. What do I do? Full atonements and party. I'm going for just a half. Yeah, so I think this is one of the things in hindsight. Even in a higher level key, you can lead with a full. Let's see, do I play a half on the backside here? Okay, he's approaching 50. There it goes. Those palms flying around. So it's a little bit of a crapshoot because you really want the extra healing after 50%. But there's loss on our cooldowns that way, so who's to say? And this pull goes pretty badly, so let's watch how it goes. My pet is 13 seconds away. So this is an example of just using our other spells to get by. I'm making sure I have all my dots out. I'm ramping long atonements and party, using paints up to kind of cover the tank. And finally, here goes the pet. Pet, Rift, Penance, then double deaths. Let's see how this goes. Looks like I'm setting up for an 8. Working a Radiance. Divine Star as well. And 8 Torments. Hallelujah. Palm out of combat. Drink. So on this little guy, just to send him away, it might look like a waste, but you want to send a full rotation here. And when it comes to boss, we have some good examples and bad examples. It's pretty sensitive overall. Looking Radiance to remove those heal absorbs, showing up as a pink. That is the curse. So we got 6 torments there, but my pet is 20 seconds away. Big prio right now is smite that thing. Smite and penance. Those are our only 2 CDR spells. Also a great time to refresh my palm. So what you want to do here, yeah, I think I let in for, this is a half rotation to cover the curses. I think a better play is just to hold, because we want a Pet, Death, Rift, Penance, and Radiance all before the knockback, which doesn't happen. So I played a barrier. I was honestly just panicking, and at this point, we can try and get back on track. So we can play a half rotation here. We kind of play it in anticipation of the curse. All we really want is the collapse to happen after the curse goes out. And that one was a slight miss. Okay, but I think we get back on track for the next buffet. So here goes Pet Death, Rift Penance, plus the Radiance, all before the knockback. And that is exactly how you want to do it. And I think the next one is almost right, but the Evoker messes me up. So we get a half rotation, just came available. You play it immediately. This will be preemptive of the curse to help cover the curse, and it will be back in time for the buffet. Okay, so dots are refreshed, atonements are in party, Pet, Death, Rift. Ooh, it hurts to see. So you might have to play that, but I was in perfect time to get my rotation there, but he gripped me during the Rift, the cast of Mind Blast. I didn't notice the Mind Blast didn't get off, and I played the Penance. So you never want to play Penance second in sequence because it buffs the Rift. Yeah, so he canceled my Rift cast, and my Penance fell on no Rift. And so now that I'm kind of thrown off here, I'm just going into Rapture to help cover. Rapture is really good for coding for the group hit. And this rotation was not too bad. I got the Pet, Death, Rift, Penance off before the hit. I did not get the radiance off before the hit. But no one needed that healing, to be honest. And that was for 5 torments. So even when it was slightly amiss, still got the torments. And here I'm just sitting at half rift, just trying to get the boss past 50%, that threshold. And we're moving on. We have PI, Palm out of combat. And there was one rotation in there that was spot on perfect. Just revisit that one, and that's what you should try and aim for each buffet. So it looks like I'm dotting 3 of the party. It is kind of too much to worry about dotting all of them. We have to get our pet out, and our penance will kind of just do the rest. PI's out, pet and rift are out. Double execute. And 6 torments. And so really all I'm thinking now is my pet is not ready, 10 seconds away. Get the last couple of smites that I can. And going down this hallway, we have single target attacks. We'll see them in the targeted cast weak aura. Really important that I find my focus early. There it is. And we want to get into a pet rift immediately. Also working in Divine Star for the damage grab. And watching out for whomever is being targeted for the targeted cast. Working in Radiance. And this is an example where I give defensive penance straight into someone and cap them with a Wheel and Woe shield. So that was a defensive Dark Reprimand, about the biggest single target heal we can do. And then when you cap it with a shield from Wheel and Woe, it just adds to that. And so now in party, thankfully I was picked, so that was a really good example of Shadow Meld. After the little ones die, we take a stacking debuff that makes the single target hit harder. So the second one is always going to hit harder than the first. So atonements are out, dot on the big one. Defensive Dark Reprimand into myself. Divine Star for the damage grab. Pain Sup to cover the Shaman on that one. A couple of executes for 6 torments. Now we really got to be careful on this next one. So I believe Rift just came up, sent it. So Mind Blast is out, and I'm kind of just holding this Harsh Discipline proc for a defensive heal. So that was a defensive Dark Reprimand, capping it with a Wheel and Woe Rapture. And I only used 1, so I have 5 left to give on this next pull. There's a defensive penance and a Rapture. Honestly, I think the only reason I lived there is the tank gave me a lay on hands. Okay, so I have a focus target early. Pet Death. Rift Penance. Big Divine Star. Working a Radiance as always. PI is out. And all we're really doing is paying close attention to these single target attacks. So I got the next one, plus I have the debuff. You have to paint up these things if you don't have a proc waiting, or, you know, whatever. And that one, thankfully, went to the Druid, who also can Shadow Meld. Okay, and on this one, I almost reacted with a defensive penance into the Shaman, but noticed he took the spell warding. So really good play from the Paladin. So I have a Rift to give. Okay, that's fine. I could have sent the Rift out with a defensive penance. Looks like I held. Yeah, so at least 2 examples in this key so far where I held a final Mind Blast. And really good practice to send those out kind of always. And this is an example where if anyone wants to argue me, there's no point. So we're waiting a couple of moments for Lust. There's no reason to spam Holy Nova right now, but there's nothing that hurts you from charging up. So the idea is, at most, you can have 2 10 stacks of Palm, and you can also have a 2 stack of Harsh Discipline. So in a moment like this where we are just waiting a little bit, I'm farming up 2 10 stacks, and where I had a slight miss is I could have been farming up my Harsh Discipline. So I think I go into boss with 1 Harsh Discipline. There's no reason not to have 2. And so these palms, just to kind of drive the point home, I'm casting them now. They're costing me nothing. They're going to last in combat for over a minute. I think the last one fades out after the boss is sub 70%. We have 1 Harsh Discipline, 2 stacks of 10 with Palm, and the first wave of damage is pretty quick, noticing the DPS do not play defensives. I want to get a dot out and then straight into Pet. So Pet Death, Rift Penance, I queue both of my defensives, and they don't. There's the PI. Worked in my Radiance as standard. And just like most bosses in most fights, this is where we queue a half rotation. So on this kind of move, I'm pre-atoning the group, and I cast my Mind Blast and Rift before the damage goes out. Work in a Radiance as always, making sure I get 2 penance into my Rift, weaving in a couple of single target heals in between. So I prefer using life. What you can do is, expecting someone is like dipping low, you can kind of hover on them and like kind of queue life when they reach into that range. Okay, so we're back to the Void Surge. So pretty much for every Void Surge we want a Pet and a Rift. That one I did not have personal defensive, so it was a pain slip on myself, and 6 Torments. So now I'm thinking about just get to position, Atonements and Party. We're sending just a Mind Blast and Rift, and still working in a Radiance. Okay, so the Rift is already out. A couple of single target heals in between, 2 penance into the Rift. Those guys are covered. So we also have Tank Slam. So watching the tank here, the targeted cast highlights on those tank busters, the white dotted line, had a shield on him. And so for this combo, it's Pet and Rift with Barrier. And since Barrier is down, I only play Fade. So I'm kind of reserving the Desperate Prayer for the next attack. You don't need to go for 3 defensives. A couple of executes there on the ads. And we're setting up for the half rotation. We want a dot on the boss. We want Atonements and Party. And I also have Rapture queued here. So the Rift is out preemptively. And this is where I use my Desperate Prayer and Fade. Second PI is out. So really good I didn't triple down on defensives back there, because I was picked. Shielded the tank with a Rapture before the hit. Looked like we didn't need it. And here comes the next Void Surge. Pet Death, Rift, Penance, all before the attack begins. Work in a Radiance as always. And a couple of executes on the ads. So you really want your opener, the Pet Death, Rift, Penance, you always, or most of the time, want that out before the damage, because your healing isn't going to really come until after those 4 are done. So you want to kind of have those butt up to the start of the attack. Okay, so Rift is out. Radiance is out. A couple of single target heals. Second penance into the boss. And we're just about over here. Shielded the tank on the Tank Slam. And sending one last Pet here just to kind of kill this guy. So Pet, Rift, Penance, boom. So missed the collapse, but not too much of a problem. This was a really good queue overall. Got a little bit of IO there, which was surprising. This was a total pug. We weren't in combat, but the Druid, I think it was the Druid, wanted to play the 15. And I said, well, I could use an upgrade, an update for my channel. So we went for it, and it was a very smooth queue overall. It almost felt like we were doing a 12, you know. But it was kind of funny. So the Aug and the Druid here were kind of flaming me for my talent choices. And I was like, I can't believe you're flaming me for taking Star, but you've not said anything about Prayer of Mending. But just a couple of words here back and forth to each other, and he was kind of on my side. He was like, oh, I didn't really even think of that. So a lot of, when it comes to talents, I don't think are that black and white. I think some are, but I don't think, for example, taking Prayer of Mending over Holy Nova means you're not going to be able to time a 15, for example. So I think as long as you're playing to your talent book and doing your best to maximize your spells, whichever ones they happen to be, that's really the most important thing. I think you can get away with a lot in keys as long as you have high execution. So, take it or leave it. But yeah, Divine Star for the win, Palm for the win. I'm having a lot of fun playing it. I don't think I was fully maximizing it here, but I have worked on that since. Really, all you have to do is try and have a 10 stack in every pull. That's not hard to do. You'll do it out of combat. You can do it while you're walking between combat. You can do it before a key starts. You can do it before a boss. You can do it if there's moments during a boss where you can't attack anything. So there's a lot of key moments where you can send it out. You know, for example, on a run back, if the first person you see is friendly, you can palm them instead of just doing nothing. So there's a lot of ways you can use this and kind of get just a little bit more healing. And my argument for it is that it's free. So yeah, but anyway, remember to check me out on Metafy. I've been having a lot of fun with my students, been getting a lot done, accomplishing a lot over there. Look into my one-on-one lectures. I also do video reviews. I can shadow your runs. We can set up UI. We can kind of do whatever you want. And if any of my UI elements are something that you would like to try, please consider supporting the channel through Metafy or YouTube. And they're all open to you that way, or just being a student. But again, thanks everyone for tuning in, and until next time, Disc.